Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Don't Copy That Floppy, your weekly video game news podcast, broadcasting live Fridays 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/DCTF podcast. I'm your host Lex, and as always, I am joined by my co-host,
Booge.
It is Friday, July 20th, and gosh, we got a whole lot of nothing to talk about this week. Get ready. Hold on to your butts, because we're going to be talking about Nathan Fillion. We figured out what he was scheming. No Man's Sky becomes a real game.
It's a real boy.
Bethesda has multiple stories we'll be talking about in relation to different games they're making. Rainbow Six Siege gets tough on toxicity. Fortnite makes so much money, it's too much money, it's just a lot of money. Other things, and then Silver Sable.
Congresspeople.
What that story was.
Congresspeople playing Twitch games on Twitch.
Cool. So, as always, we're going to round out the show by talking about games that just came out and games that are about to come out. But let's jump into our first story, all about Nathan Fillion.
Nathan Fillion playing Nathan Drake. So last week, we talked about how Nathan Fillion was teasing something that was obviously Uncharted related, I think on his Instagram. And this brought up years of speculation that people said that he should play Nathan Drake because he kind of looks like Nathan Drake, and that he should play him in a movie. And so finally, it gets announced that it's not a full movie, but it's a little live-action fan film. Well, I shouldn't say little; it's highly produced and paid for by Nathan Fillion and friends. And yeah, that's about it. It sucked. I watched it. It was not good and not funny.
Okay, I'm glad you agree with me on this, because I have heard so many glowing reviews of that goddamn movie.
No, it was bad. I mean, it had some... For a fan film, it had some alright action, I guess. A couple little action pieces. But it was, really... The jokes were really bad. I've watched people play some of the Uncharted games, and I don't think that the tone was quite right. It was way too jokey. The Uncharted games are jokey and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of, they're like Indiana Jones games, basically. But this is just, really, homophobic jokes, and then, more dick jokes, and then, Nathan Fillion sat in a chair for a long time. Mm-hmm. And that was about it.
Yep. I was watching. Did you ever watch a bad TV show on USA original series called Burn Notice?
No, but that's the one with Bruce Campbell in it. It
does have Bruce Campbell. He's the best part of that show. But the show is, the premise is you've got this this CIA agent. He's a super spy type character, but because of some government bureaucracy and someone not liking him, he gets burned. So he's fired from the CIA, and then they pretend they have no knowledge of him at all, and they freeze all his bank accounts and everything. So he's basically penniless. He has to go back and move in with his mom, and the government disavows that they know anything about him or his career. So the whole premise of the show is him he sets up his own agency for doing kind of detective work and kind of bodyguard work and stuff like that. And he gets together with his friends, one of them ex-CIA agent, retired, Bruce Campbell, and his girlfriend who's a mercenary. And the week-to-week is him doing these jobs in Miami, Florida, I think. And then the overarching season plot is him trying to, regain his position at the CIA. Not a great show. And the problem was that it tried to be an action espionage show on the budget of a basic cable television program.
Yeah.
So all of the stunts were all fine but pretty mediocre, and all the action sequences were clearly underfunded, but sometimes there's an explosion or a boat chase or a car chase here and there. Yeah. And when I saw this Uncharted fan film, all I could think about was that show because it was on the exact same production value level.
Yeah. The sub 100 million club, I guess. Yeah, it's. I mean, there's real actors in this little thing. There's that guy from Avatar. who the old guy.
Oh, you mean Avatar, the James Cameron movie, not Avatar, the M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh no, I'm not talking
movie.
about The Last Airbender. No, the far superior Last Airbender. No, it had some people in it, but yeah, it looked like an episode of like a ABC show or a sci-fi show or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting that I don't exactly know who paid for this. I think it was like a co-production of a couple people, but I don't know. Like, it reminds me of that Power Rangers fan film that came out like a couple years ago. Do you remember that? It was like a super violent, realistic Power Rangers thing
I do remember that. I mean, I thought more highly of that than I think of this, just because that had more style than this does.
Yeah, totally does. But it reminds me of the same kind of like, I don't know, the reasons for it being made seem similar to me, you know, where it's like, yeah, we're just going to put this out to get attention for the people that made it, maybe, I guess, because, I mean, you're not going to make a lot of money off of YouTube, even though it made, like, has 2 million views or whatever. It's just, like, YouTube doesn't work. If this was old YouTube, then, yeah, you would have made a lot of money from that, but not nowadays. So, I don't know. Is this, like, them trying to be like, Sony? Want to make an Uncharted film? Or it's just like a thing to get the director's name out there. Kind of strange thing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where maybe if they were trying to get Sony to make a film, they were trying to go the Deadpool route.
Yeah.
But the thing that they failed to do was make something as compelling as the Deadpool leaked footage.
Yeah.
Because the Deadpool leaked footage was very compelling, and this was not.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that those actors would have been fine if they had been written better, and if they had had more money to have like a location that wasn't just some random mansion that they were renting for a weekend.
Nathan Fillion's summer home.
Yeah, and it's just like it was just so underwhelming. It was really, really boring, and I did not like it.
Especially because the video games, compared to the video games, which are so high budget, so well produced and written, and like so full of incredible set pieces, like that's the whole point of those games, is that they're like technical wonder shows, and then this is just like this underwhelming thing. It's like, yeah, that doesn't really match up. Too much.
There was actually
talking about underwhelming things. Sorry,
I was gonna say there's actually a side story to this that was apparently Nathan Fillion does the voice of a character in Destiny, the Destiny franchise, and he's, because of some change in his schedule, like he's doing a show or a movie or something, he couldn't do the recording for the lines for that character for like the next expansion or whatever. So Nolan North took over. And it was just this jokey thing where it's like they swapped roles, everyone.
Did Nolan North get to say that a wizard came from the moon?
He actually does get to say that because he's also the person who replaced Peter Dinklage.
Actually?
Yeah, so he does get to say that a wizard came from the moon. Yeah.
That wizard came from the moon.
Yep.
Good times.
Good for you, Nolan North. But yeah, speaking of underwhelming things, does anybody remember No Man's Sky?
No Man's Sky!
2 years ago, a game called No Man's Sky came out. It was hyped on late-night talk shows and
oh god,
all sorts of press conferences. Everyone was so excited. And what was it? Just another Fable situation.
Yeah. If not a little more than that.
Yeah, maybe even on a grander scale than that. Because they didn't just say you could plant a tree and watch it grow. They said you could freaking explore the galaxy.
Yeah, endless planets, and you could do anything you wanted.
Anything. You could.
All this coming from a team of like 10 people.
Yeah. So, the game came out, and it was super underwhelming, and not real. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't what was promised.
Yeah, it was like a Minecraft-y kind of like indie game.
Yeah, you go and explore different procedurally generated planets, but they're not like that different.
No. And the monsters turn out to be really weird looking.
Yeah, and they're not very smart or very interesting looking. And the game was like kind of ugly, although it had a very vibrant color palette, which I always appreciated. And
it caused one of the biggest backlashes I've ever seen from a already vitriolic video game community.
Yep. Sean Murray, the what was it? Hello Games is the
Yeah,
company,
Hello
and
Games.
Sean Murray, the guy who ran it, who did all the press, pretty much had to go into hiding.
Yep.
But after that, in the 2 years that have followed, the vitriol has died down, mostly because people have forgotten about it. But they have done updates to it. And they are now about to release their third update. And looking at all the updates, there are a lot of articles coming out, especially about the third update and all that stuff, and saying, hey, this is like actually the game that they promised us 2 years ago. Like, not quite, but it's pretty much the game that they promised us 2 years ago. So the updates have done things like graphical upgrades. That's what the newest one is going to do specifically, among other things. It's expanded to like all sorts of vehicle stuff, base building, more factions that you can interact with, and different
Underwater stuff,
different kinds of NPCs, different kinds of like things you can do with your ship, and how you can upgrade it and get different kinds of ships. You can now have like fleets, or actually I think the fleets thing is about coming in the update that's about to happen.
Yeah, you can have freighters.
Yeah.
Stuff.
You can do one of the things that they talked big on initially was this idea that you could do like sort of the intergalactic trading and sort of build an empire doing that. But then the economy wasn't fleshed out enough for that to actually be an interesting gameplay mechanic, so it didn't happen.
It didn't really exist.
But now you can do that. And this final update, which is called the Next update. I forget what they were all called. The first one was called Foundation. I forget what the second one was called, and the third one is called Next. And Next gives you all sorts of stuff. The big graphical upgrades, it gives you a third-person perspective, so you can finally see what your dude looks like.
Woo!
Wow. And it gives one of the things that they had teased during the press tour quite a bit, which is multiplayer. The game now actually has multiplayer.
Oh my god, do you remember all the debates about, like, is the game actually multiplayer or not? Like, back when it was coming out, and, like, there's people that were, like, going to the exact same points in the game, and, like, they trying to find each other, and they couldn't find each other. And then, like, that for some reason, Hello Games kept on refusing to say it wasn't multiplayer.
That's what was funny.
Shit.
Yeah, because it was like Sean Murray, when he was asked about it in interviews, they were like, oh, is it multiplayer? And he says, oh yeah, technically you're all in the same galaxy that is created for everyone. And they said, oh, okay, cool, so can you meet up with people? And he's like, oh, well, technically you could, but two people would need to find the same spot on the same planet, and that's not possible considering how vast the galaxy is. And the internet
took, like, 3 hours.
Yeah, the internet took that as a challenge, and people figured out how to do that and find each other and go to the same place on the same planet in that shared galaxy, and they could not see each other, so it was proven that it was not multiplayer. It was funny that Sean Murray was just like, oh, I mean, it's impossible. They would never find each other, so then no one would ever figure it out, so I might as well just lie about it.
Right. I think when he would say, like, technically it's possible, I think he literally meant, like, the technology exists to make it possible. But I'm not going to say that it is or is not in the game. Very strange. Everything about the pressing of this game, everything about how it was covered and what was promised and how Sony handled all this. I think Sony is probably the most to blame about how this was handled. It was a fascinating adventure of vitriol and lies. But finally, it seems like people that because there are people that are still playing this game, amazingly.
Yeah, I think I read that it still has over 1,000 concurrent players on Steam, something like that.
Yeah, and it seems like they're finally going to get the game that they wanted. It just took 2 years plus the original development. So good for them. This is the thing, like, regardless of Sean Murray. I almost said Bill Murray, lying or omitting the truth or whatever, or being shuttled out there by Sony PR, which was a bad idea. Never put game devs out there. Regardless of all that, good on Hello Games for keeping at it and for actually trying to build out the game that people wanted in the first place. Like, that's not something. I think that you could have gone like the boss key route and just been like, we're making a battle royale game. oh shit, we're gonna close. Instead, they actually like got money and turned it around to try to forge this thing into a game that people want to play.
Yeah, so I want to talk briefly about some of the features in the update. Just quoting the article here from Eurogamer from today, actually the 20th. So it talks about graphics, and it talks about, perhaps more than anything, though, it's the newfound sense of scale that impresses. With the game now sporting a more Earth-like planetary generation system, mountains tower above undulating, good word, valleys populated by looming trees, larger architectural props, and notably improved fauna. Creatures feature more nuanced animations, improved AI, and a broader range of sounds, all of which help to sell the illusion of life just that little bit harder. So that's one of the other things people were complaining about earlier on. As you had said, all the creatures just look weird, and that was certainly true, but it was also that they were just really stupid. They would wander around, and pretty much, like, if they were herbivores, they would just wander around and chew on grass. And that was it. And if they were carnivores, they would wander around, and every once in a while they would try to eat an herbivore, and that was it. They had no thought process beyond that. So the fact that they have upgraded that to make the animals more like real animals and sort of contributes to this ecosystem that gets generated, I think was a really good thing to put in there. I'm glad they did. Let's see. Yeah. Hello Games changes go beyond mere aesthetic tinkering, and it's surprising just how much has, in the last year, been tweaked and enriched. It'll require a lot more time to properly gauge the true impact of Next, but here are a few early observations. The entire opening of No Man's Sky that had been once again reworked to make for a more accessible introduction to the game's sometimes opaque systems. Oh, that's one of the other things. People who bought this game day one were saying, like, I don't really understand how to, like, actually travel between planets.
Yeah, it was a bit of a mess.
Let's see, which had grown more complex through the previous 3 major updates. Let's see here. What does it talk about in terms of other features? Renewed. Oh, yeah, it talks about the freighters system. No Man's Sky places renewed emphasis on freighters. Improved versions of these with better stats can be found around the galaxy as play progresses, and freighters have been redesigned so that the customizable area is now basically a large hangar waiting to be filled with rooms. Are front and center, giving a much greater sense of ownership and personalization. Additionally, your freighter is where you'll encounter the new frigate system. This wasn't a feature I saw myself during my playtime, but it's described as something like Monster Hunter's Palico system. It doesn't mean anything to me because I don't play Monster Hunter. You can buy frigates up to 50 in a fleet, which will be visible around your freighter, and each can have its own specializations. Frigates are sent on procedurally generated missions, which play out in real time and can be followed across the galaxy or simply left to complete their mission, reaping the rewards of a successful adventure. So that's interesting because it adds this element to the game where, like, you can build up an empire and just have it sort of do things while you're not necessarily, like, micromanaging everything, which is which again is one of the things that was kind of implied in promises during the initial media tour. But I'm glad that that's finally being realized because it's a gameplay feature that I'm sure some people wanted.
Yeah, that's what I wanted out of the game. I mean, like, when I like space games, but I like space games that are, like, economy focused and, like, about trading and stuff like that. Because I'm one of those weird old people that likes that kind of shit. So that was the kind of stuff I was excited about, and it wasn't in the game. And I was just like, oh, well, then that's very not exciting for me. So yeah, all this. I mean, honestly, I'm thinking about trying it out again, seeing as they have this much shit back in the game.
I think that it's interesting because some people were saying, I think it was like Rooster Teeth's channel, were saying like, oh, so if they had just said 2 years ago that this was an early access game, all of this would have been forgiven. No one would have been upset. This all would have worked out fine. Yeah. And that's basically what it was. It was an early access game, and now basically the final version of the game has come out, it seems. At least according to the reports, pretty much everyone I've seen writing about this next update who've gotten their hands on it have said it's very impressive, it really makes it into a new game in all sorts of different ways, and it's finally the game that, sort of anyway, the game that we were promised.
Right, yeah. It's yeah, it's you're completely right. It was a early access game, and yeah, when you put it in that kind of context, when you think of any other kind of game on Steam that is just like this, and it's been in early access for 5 years, and people don't complain. If it had gone that route, yeah, no one would have batted an eye. But for some reason, it was this early access game made by a very small team that Sony treated like a AAA Naughty Dog game. Like, it was very odd how much oxygen they gave that game when it was first coming out, and that was really its downfall.
So yeah, the bottom line is, go buy No Man's Sky, because guess what, everybody? No Man's Sky just came out.
Yeah, No Man's Sky just came out.
Or rather, it's coming out in 4 days, I think is when this update actually hits. Could be wrong.
Is it? Yeah, something like that. I also think it's great on this article. You can tell it's written by a European by the way they spell center. If you want to know if a European wrote an article, look for the words color and center.
Yeah.
And you'll know immediately.
Got some theater in here. Oof, all those REs.
Theatre.
So anyway, let's talk about Bethesda.
Bethesda and Todd Howard. So this was a big old article by Kezia McDonald at The Guardian. She's been around forever. She's a good writer, and I feel bad that she has to be The Guardian's video game writer now, because now she has to write to a bunch of old people that don't know what video games are. But this is a long article, an interview with Todd Howard, the game director. I think he's the game director of Bethesda Games. Is that his title? Something like that. They just talk about a lot of things, and some of them I think were interesting. They start out by talking about how they don't think that single-player games are dying or are dead, even though a lot of people have been talking about that. They're like, hey, we're doing fine. We're a company that only makes single-player games. Fallout 76 notwithstanding. They go on to talk about how the Elder Scrolls is going to be around for a long time, but don't expect it for a while. And then they go on to some other interesting things like, where is it? Yeah, Todd Howard starts talking about that they don't plan on doing any external Fallout games like they did with New Vegas, which I think is really upsetting to me. Quote, I wouldn't say never, he says, but now that our company is so big, it's always better to keep stuff internal. It becomes less likely, but I could never say never. I thought the Obsidian guys did a fabulous job. So that sounds like you're probably never going to get an Obsidian Fallout game again, which is really too bad, because that was my favorite.
I mean,
my favorite one.
I'm happy. I'm only not sad about that just because Obsidian is now doing their own thing with their Pillars of Eternity game, so it's not like they're hurting for money, and they have their own little niche that they're sort of comfortable in, so they kind of don't, they're in a position that they don't need to be doing third-party work for other companies.
Yeah, they don't need to, although they have mentioned that they would like to do another Fallout game, because they're mostly comprised of the guys that did the original Fallout, so they're like, yeah, let us have our franchise back, please. But yeah, they go on. Howard goes on to talk about some more stuff. Howard was demurred on something that fans are constantly asking for, especially since Skyrim was released on the PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Modern remastered of Bethesda's older games. Quote, I'm happy that you can play Morrowind now on an Xbox One, and it's backwards compatible. I'm really happy that Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, and others are making it easier for people to play older games, as they were played at the time. I actually prefer that over remasters, he says. Quote, I'd rather you play Morrowind the way it was. I think the age is part of its identity. For Skyrim Remastered, we had done some work on it, but it was already pretty visually close. But for something like Morrowind, my personal preference is not to remaster it. We also get asked a lot to remaster 1997's Fallout 1, and I usually say, if you have a PC, you can play Fallout the way it was. I think that's how it should be. I think streaming technology is definitely coming, and it's going to make people's access to games infinitely easier. You've seen it happen to music and movies, and I think it's a great thing. So he's basically saying, no, they're never going to remaster Morrowind, although a lot of people have been asking for that forever. I'm fine with that. I don't think you should remaster Morrowind. Because, as he says, and I do agree with him on this, is that, like, one of the things I don't like about remasters is that it takes away the age element, which is like a part of history, right? It's what defines a lot of games, is the age of it. You know, when you pick up like GoldenEye for 64, you can be like, wow, yeah, this is a game from the 90s. Like, this is very much a part of its identity. And if you start twisting that and changing that and remastering that to the point where it's just a normal modern shooter, it loses that identity and it loses that history that it's a part of. So I'm with him on that one, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of remasters in general. He talks a little bit about Starfield, which was the big sci-fi game that they announced at E3. And he says, quote, "We've been talking about it for a decade. We started putting things together on paper 5-6 years ago, and active development was from when we finished Fallout 4, so 2.5-3 years. When it comes to both Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield, he says, everyone should be very patient. It's going to take a while for what we have in mind to come out." So that's a usual Bethesda response. They're usually like, yeah, it's not going to be done till it's done, so don't expect it for a while. But it's kind of too bad that we're probably going to have to wait another, like, 3 years to see something like Starfield coming out.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a while.
But one thing that is coming out relatively soon, I think in a couple months, is Fallout 76, the big game that they announced at E3. The big multiplayer Fallout game that they announced at E3. So since it's been announced, I'm a huge Fallout fan, the old ones and the new ones. And even though it's been covered in great lengths, I still don't fully understand what kind of game this is. It's really odd. There's some quotes in here from Todd Howard once again. Once again, this is from Kevin McDonald, kind of an extension of the interview with him. And he talks a little bit about the game, and he says some things that I think are indicative of what kind of game we might get. He says, quote, "We avoid the word survival because people's minds immediately go to DayZ and Rust and certain other games, and those comparisons are not really accurate for what we're doing," Howard says. "If you think about the survival modes we've made in Fallout 4, it has that vibe, Fallout 76. Although it's an online game, when I play it, I mostly still play it solo. We like those experiences as much as our fans do." So I think that's a little reassuring. It's like, okay, so there's going to be single player, but it's online, and there's other players in your world, I guess. It's very odd. And they go on to say things like, players share the world with maybe a few dozen other players in Fallout 76, not hundreds. You can choose whether or not to interact, help, or hinder each other. I don't know what that means. Every human you meet in the game will be another player, but robots, intelligent ghouls, and mutants also exist in the world. Unlike in Rust or DayZ, this isn't a game in which someone can run up to you in the first 5 minutes or 5 hours, kill you with a superior weapon, steal all your stuff, and leave you back at square one. Quote, "No, that's not fun," said Todd. "Well, it's fun for whoever killed you, but not for you. Death is already bad enough in a game because you're losing time. That we didn't feel we needed to add any further penalty. We wanted to make sure that you don't lose your progression." Once again, don't know what that means. Like, that could mean kind of anything. So, I think we're still in the dark a little bit about what this game is. I think that some of those quotes kind of clues me in. It's like, okay, so yeah, you can play it single player, I guess, and there's quests and stuff. Because he also says some other games have done a little bit of that, but not in the way that we want to do it. Fallout 76 is a mix of what you'd expect of us. There's an open world with our kind of quests, and you do have a goal, but then you don't know what's going to happen when you run into somebody else. That's interested us greatly from a design mood standpoint. So, I don't know. I don't know. What is your take on this game and what it's going to end up being?
I think it's going to be something that makes Bethesda a lot of money, and I think that's first and foremost their thought process, because they're thinking everybody loves Fallout. What if we just made Fallout multiplayer? Then people would be more interested in playing it because they'd be able to play with their friends.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that's where they're coming from a design standpoint, pretty much completely. Possibly, whether those two things are going to actually mix properly or whether they're just going to be a huge mess, we'll have to see, because I don't know. And as we know, they're being very sort of murky about their explanations of exactly how this game is going to work with those kinds of player interactions.
Yeah.
But eventually we're going to see eventually we're going to see gameplay footage of this, and then we're going to be able to decide for ourselves.
Well, there's a beta that is coming out, I think, relatively soon. So that'll be a huge indicator of what this actually is. Yeah, the thing that worries me, it could have just been because at E3 they spent Todd Howard stood on stage and talked for like 30 minutes about this game, and I still was not sure what kind of game it was. And I don't know if that was just mixed messaging on their part, or if they're being intentionally vague because they know that the systems are a mess, which would suck. Because the way that you show off a game like this is you have Todd Howard come on stage, say, our next game's Fallout 76, here's a look at gameplay, get off the stage, and then just show 30 minutes of the game being played. Mm-hmm. Which is what they didn't do.
I mean, in a perfect world, that's what every game dev would do, but...
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
in a perfect world, we don't have E3, and each company just releases videos on their Twitter, so we don't have to go through all that bullshit. But yeah, I'm curious... like the whole fact that there's no NPC humans, like they don't mention any of that. It's like, so, but there are quests, but you have people in the world who can blow you up. And it's like, one thing that is worrying me is all this stuff, whenever they talk about it, they seem to downplay just how much, how the hoops that people will go through to grief people online. Like they keep on saying like, yeah, we're trying to make it so it's not that hard. You don't have hundreds of people. You have tens, a couple dozen. It's like, you have no idea, I think, how much people will go through just to ruin somebody else's time in a game, teabag them, and scream the N-word into their microphone as loud as they can. Like, that is how the internet and gamers work, So it seems like they're downplaying some of that, which worries me, that it's just going to become a rampant grief fest every single time you come online.
Yeah, no, it totally could be. And as soon as the beta starts up, we'll start to get an indication of which way that's going to go. Mm-hmm. But speaking of grief fests and people who just want to shout obscenities at somebody else, there are companies that want people to stop doing that. And one of those companies is Ubisoft. And the game that they are trying to do that in is Rainbow Six Siege. So Rainbow Six Siege, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's the new Tom Clancy Rainbow Six game, but it's always online. And you play, you have to stop terrorists.
Stop them terrorists.
It's got some partially destructible environments and all sorts of different stratagems to do matches and things. And it has a very dedicated community and fan base.
It looks like a great game, by the way. I've always wanted to play it.
Yeah, it's sort of just been on a slow burn, sort of building momentum for years, like ever since it came out.
Yeah.
And that's good. But one of the things that they're doing is they've implemented new chat moderation. And wow, this is some fantastic chat moderation. I love it. It's real hardcore. So earlier this year, Ubisoft said it was implementing stricter moderation in Rainbow Six Siege, which I actually think we reported on when that story came out. I vaguely remember it. To find and sanction players using hate speech. Recently, players have started noticing an uptick in bans being issued and have been discussing it on the game subreddit. A few even took to Twitter to complain. One lovely fan said, "Fuck you guys, I just got a ban for saying nibba in chat." One player tweeted at Ubisoft last Friday, nibba being a thinly veiled way of saying the N-word for those who don't have a brain. Yes. Good, the publisher responded.
I think that's so great.
Yeah, no, that was the best. There's actually a little more to that exchange that I was reading, which was that someone else was like, oh, with all the problems that are wrong with your game and what you guys choose to focus on is just policing what people say in chat. Glad you got your priorities in order, Ubisoft. And Ubisoft responded by being, we think toxicity and racism in chat is a huge priority. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think this is, I think it's good. I think more companies should kind of try to do this. The thing is that it requires the company to take a stance, which is going to always divide your player base. And this is why you'll never see something like this happen with PUBG or Counter-Strike, because they don't want to upset the 12-year-olds that want to scream the N-word as loud as they possibly can in homophobic slurs into their microphones at 2 in the morning while they play, Dust 2. So it's bold for Ubisoft to take this stance because they're going to lose a bunch of people with this, no doubt. But it's the better side of morality. They'll be on the better side of history when people look back at this game. Because it is a priority. Like
this is
horrible toxicity is it's either like mentally damaging or annoying to the point where a lot of people wouldn't want to play the game anymore. Like that's why I stopped playing Overwatch. I was just like, I'm kind of done. Like I'm almost 30 years old. I don't need to spend my evening listening to this garbage.
Yep.
This is really too bad.
It's interesting because this actually reminded me when I read it of a story that we reported on a little while ago, the Bully Hunters story.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about how the way Bully Hunters implemented things was just all wrong. You can go and actually we dedicated like most of an episode to that. So if you want to go back and listen to that, feel free. I'm not going to retread all of that, but
no, it's a very bizarre thing.
It's a weird thing. But just as a quick recap, their idea was if people are saying toxic stuff in chat, then they will have someone come in and then kill them in game as retribution for saying toxic stuff in chat. And one of the points that we were making when we were reporting on that is like, this isn't the right way to handle this. The right way to handle this would be to work with the game dev studios who are, hosting the servers and have power over chat to try to moderate it in a better way so that people aren't being toxic and, banning people who are being toxic. And that's what Ubisoft is doing. Yep. And I'm like, great, this is exactly the way this should be handled. So,
yes.
Also,
it's a good solution.
Yeah.
To the problem.
It is, the more you look into it, the more I realize it is also fair, is quite fair. Mm-hmm. If you say something racist, you will be immediately banned, but you will be banned for like half an hour.
Yeah.
And then if you say something racist again, you're banned for like you're banned for like several hours or like a day or something. And then if you,
in case you made 3 mistakes,
and if you do it again, you're banned for like several days, and that's when a person from the company will come in and review you and see if you should be permabanned or not.
Right.
So it's like it takes stress off of the game devs because they are actually moderating people, but they're not micromanaging every single thing. There's actually like someone has to be a repeat offender for them to step in. So that's a good way to run it.
And hopefully it teaches them a lesson, or it's like you get slapped on the wrist enough times, like stop being a racist and homophobic piece of garbage if you want to play our game.
Yep, pretty much.
Or if you are a racist, homophobic piece of garbage, just don't express it while you're playing.
Yeah, and if heaven forbid you slip up and just type the N-word, somehow your finger slipped and you type the N-word.
It slipped 5 letters.
Yeah, but you've never done that before. You're not gonna like be seriously hindered in your ability to play the game, and hopefully you will have learned your lesson to just be like, oh, okay, I shouldn't do that again.
Yeah, maybe you're just ninja and you happen to be a really white guy that wants to try freestyle rapping.
Yes, exactly for those situations. A ninja would only be banned for half an hour, and then he'd be back to playing with Drake, the next day. So,
but if you're a PewDiePie and you actually are a legitimate piece of garbage, then you get banned forever.
Yeah.
One of my favorite thing about this whole story, though, is that people are using this as a tactical advantage in the game now.
Oh my gosh, that I was about to mention that. That's like, that is my favorite part. It's so good.
Yeah, so it says, at the same time, the new chat monitoring system has also created a new metagame in which some players try to bait one another into typing something that could be construed as hate speech in order to get them banned or removed from a match. Eurogamer reported on the phenomenon over the weekend, and while it's difficult to know how widespread it is, plenty of players have come forward admitting to it on social media. Quote, "I feel like a dick, but I've used this to my advantage earlier today," wrote one player in a now locked Reddit thread about the new bans. Quote, "In a ranked games, I typed in chat, 'Don't be a racist,' and the enemy got instantly kicked because I baited him into typing something racist." Someone responded, "LMAO, still his fault and worthy of a ban." I think that's so great that people are actually using this as like a weaponizing it pretty much.
No, I love it. It's so good because it's one of those things where if you say don't say something racist, I mean, that should just be something you would say because that shouldn't be a bait, right?
Right.
But just the fact that someone's immediate response to that is to troll you, of course they deserve to get banned because their immediate response to you saying not being racist is to troll you with racism.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty much indicative of someone that should not probably be playing the game. So, Yeah, I thought that was great that people are using this against their foes.
Fantastic. So that was a little ray of sunshine today. And as the title of this article says, every game should copy Rainbow Six's new chat moderation, and I agree. They should. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about a game that, as you said, is never going to copy that chat moderation.
No.
Because they got to make that cheddar.
Got to make that cheddar with those 12-year-olds. Fortnite. This is from Dot Sports. Fortnite has reportedly made over $1 billion from in-game microtransactions, also known as MTX, or recurrent consumer spending, as we found out.
These aren't games. These are live services.
Yes, exactly. These are lifestyles. Fortnite has surpassed $1 billion in revenue off the in-game purchases alone, according to a new report from SuperData Research. SuperData's report is all about the rise of Battle Royale, so it's no surprise that Fortnite is a focal point. Epic Point's smash hit has now surpassed the $1 billion mark in a little under 10 months since release. It's crazy that it's only been 10 months. Feels like this game's been around since the 90s. That's a stunning statistic considering Fortnite is completely free to play. All that money has come solely from in-game purchases. In order to use cosmetic skins for characters, players must purchase a currency called V-Bucks. Hoop dollars. Gotta love those names. And then there's this really goofy graph from SuperData. It says gaming video content hours watched in May across all platforms worldwide, and Fortnite is well in the lead with 574 minutes or million hours. I'm guessing that's what that stands for.
Yeah, it's crazy because you'd think that PUBG would be comparable, but it's not. It's not even close.
Not even League of Legends.
Yeah, League of Legends does better, but it's still not even close.
Yeah.
You know what I found was interesting though about this? World of Tanks holding in at last place. It's in there. People watching World of Tanks.
People love. There's a very hardcore audience for World of Tanks.
It's a niche market.
It's a niche market, but it's a profitable one. Yeah. 100 V-Bucks translates to about $1. So in total, players have purchased around 100 billion V-Bucks. That's a whole lot of outfits, gliders, pickaxes, and emotes. The report also made it abundantly clear that people are not just playing the heck out of Fortnite, they're watching it too. Fortnite clocked in 574 million content hours watched when across all platforms in May, dwarfing League and PUBG, and we talked about this. When it comes to overall Battle Royale content, Fortnite accounts for 83% of the nearly 700 million total hours. It's crazy. It's crazy because we keep on hearing time and time again how Fortnite's like the best-selling game of all time and how huge Fortnite is, and oh my god, all kids do is play Fortnite and all this. I think it's crazy when you actually look at the statistics against also big games that you would also consider huge, and how much it just dwarfs them absolutely.
Yeah.
That you start to realize just how big Fortnite is. This weird Frankenstein's monster of a game that it just will not stop selling all the money to all the things.
I knew it from the beginning because I knew that PUBG looks like trash.
Yeah.
And is very glitchy, so all a competitor needed to do was take the same winning formula but put it into a game that worked better and looked prettier and give it away for free and have microtransactions, and it would obviously get ahead.
And it just so happened to be the company that made the engine that PUBG runs on.
Yeah, which just makes it more embarrassing, but
it is.
Yeah.
And it's just it blows my mind that like Epic had been working on this game for so long, and the mode that they spent so much time on is not the mode that is popular at all. It's the one that they use to copy another game.
I don't know, maybe we talked about this last week, or maybe I just saw a story on it recently, but there was a thing about how apparently when Fortnite first came out, there were physical copies that were produced, but there was only like 30 to 50,000 of them, and now they're like super rare and they go on eBay for like a bunch of money because physical copies of Fortnite just don't exist. But what's interesting about them is they were made, like, I think they had the Battle Royale mode, or maybe they didn't, but once the game was installed you could download that, so they effectively had that. But they were actually marketed as the original mode of the game, so that's what you were buying when you were buying those physical copies, which was amusing to me. Also, I want to play that mode of the game.
You can still play it. It's still in the game. You just have to buy it.
I don't want to buy it.
And yeah, because it's the Save the World mode. It's like a zombie. It's I mean, it's the name of the game is because you're supposed to build like this fort to survive like horde mode zombies
Yep.
with a bunch of people online. Then that was the game that they were building for years. They took forever to build that game. Came out, didn't make a splash at all, and they're like, hey, let's just throw in a PUBG clone in here. And now it's now they'll never stop making money for
Correct.
the rest of time.
Yep. All right. So let's talk about politics, shall we?
Nah. Yeah, this is just a short one because there really wasn't too much to talk about this week, but I found this interesting. You can now watch U.S. Congresspeople stream video games. The Washington Post is now Twitch streaming politicians beating its reporters at video games, starting today with Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, I don't know how to pronounce that, demolishing reporter David Weigel 26-0 in Madden 18. It's an extremely weird interview format, but one that feels particularly at home in the absurd media landscape of 2018. I watched a little bit of this, and it is so bad. It is so awful. But interesting, like, I guess it could be interesting, but they're basically... So they just play Madden badly, and they don't... And then, like, they occasionally throw softball political questions, and then they answer them kind of haltingly because they're busy playing a video game.
Okay, the only thing I like about this is if you look at the picture from the stream,
yeah,
the blue screen or green screen background is all of these game cartridges.
Yeah.
And they have customized covers that are for like different political things.
Yeah, if you go to the Twitch, that's there before they start streaming. It's just it's like a scrolling wall of that just keeps on going and going. Yeah, there's a bunch of really cool ones in there. Like there's like there's like the JFK NES game and shit like that. It's really cool. Whoever did that shit, good job. But yeah, so why Madden 18? Apparently Gaetz, who admits that he doesn't really play games all that much, picked it. He began explaining why at one point, quote, if you needed a game to prove you're a real American, before trailing off. Jesus. For his part, Weigel confessed to preferring shooters, saying he played the Call of Duty Online from time to time. Quote, the World War II game was a little less exciting than it should have been, he said, offering the hottest take he could muster. Both men looked like they felt out of place. Yeah, they sure did.
Mm-hmm.
Unsure how to interact over the game. Yeah, so
this exists because they know kids are watching Twitch streams and they want kids to look at the Washington Post. That's why this exists, right? That's the reason. I can't think of any other reason why it would exist.
I mean, I'm guessing that one of these guys, one of the reporters from the Washington Post, maybe plays, because there's another guy too that reads chat and throws out questions.
A little Waluigi. He's got a little Waluigi. The guy who reads chat. There's a picture farther down in the article.
Yes. It maybe was just one of their ideas. They're like, hey, we have this studio space. Why don't we just talk to politicians while we play video games? I guess they might have seen the one of them probably knew about the popularity of Twitch and streaming, and they're like, hey, yeah, we can get more people in if we can get some people that are watching Twitch to watch the Washington Post, and that's good thinking if you're a company.
Yeah.
Because they say also in here. The Washington Post began its Twitch program in April by streaming Mark Zuckerberg's Senate hearing. This week is used Trump's Helsinki summit with Vladimir Putin to kick off a more regular schedule, including a series of analysis talk shows with reporter Libby Casey and a series of more traditional gaming streams called Playing Games with Politicians. Yeah, and then they say the Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, who also owns Amazon, which also owns Twitch. So the paper's attempt to break into political coverage orienting around players' video games isn't a surprise. I think... Yeah, I've talked about it before. I think it was last week or the week before we talked, or no, it was a while ago. But we talked about how much people watch Twitch, and it's starting to eclipse television hours. The people that watch like YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that. And if these, Washington Post, if other traditional, media, like journalistic media places, and also things like ESPN and stuff like that, if they want to survive in the future, they got to move over to Twitch and these kind of platforms because that's where people watch this stuff.
Yep.
I think it was last week when the Overwatch League is on ESPN, and I mentioned that it's too little too late, because if the kids that are watching the Overwatch League aren't watching it, don't have cable, like they're watching it on Twitch, So yeah, totally a good idea to get on there. Playing video games with politicians, a little weird, especially with this guy. He's a 35-year-old congressman who spent his relatively young political career courting the most unapologetic conservatives and alt-right parts of the Republican Party. The banner for his Twitter page is him taking a selfie with Trump. He's been on InfoWars. He invited a Holocaust denier and white supremacist Chuck Johnson to be his guest at the State of the Union. He was elected the same year as Trump, and since has been made a name for himself for being the president's #1 congressional defender. So yeah, he's
So playing video games with him feels flippant.
Yes, exactly.
But no, I was going to say this is a no-win situation with politicians, right? For the
Right.
Washington Post, because if you're a young politician.
Right.
You probably are more acquainted with video games, but you probably don't play video games that often because all you're doing is political stuff so that you could get to the place in your career where you're currently at your age, right? And if you're an older politician, you would theoretically have time to play video games, but you've definitely never played a video game and don't know what a video game is. So
Right. There's no President Underwood in real life.
Yes.
who
Now,
plays games.
they could, however, do this same thing, but not have it be politicians and have it be other people from the media, and it would be great, right?
Yeah.
So they could do it with celebrities. They could do it with, like, anybody from Silicon Valley. They could have Zuckerberg on. This would be a perfect format for Zuckerberg.
Yeah, he put on his human suit and pretend to be real for a little while.
Lick his eyeballs a little bit so that they don't dry out. That's my image of Zuckerberg as a lizard person. Is his tongue is long enough that he has to lick his eyeballs so that they don't dry out. That's
the sideways eyelids come up too.
never been a stronger argument for a lizard person than Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, seriously,
never been. So there's if they did that, I think this actually could be a segment that totally works. But doing it with politicians is not. I mean, let me phrase that. In 20 years, it could work.
Sure.
Because you would have enough politicians that are younger and grew up with video games that are acquainted with them that it could work. But right now there aren't enough. Like, I was just thinking about how, like, the youngest congresswoman who's about to be a congresswoman who's been all over the news is Ocasio-Cortez.
Yep. 28.
Yeah, and she's 28. And I was just like, oh, maybe her, but then I thought, no, there's no way that she plays video games because if she's driven enough to be a congresswoman at 28, she doesn't play video games.
Right.
She doesn't have time.
Has more important stuff to deal with than video games, quite frankly. And it's like this guy, this Republican dirtbag, he's 35, so it's like he could have very easily been a kid with like an NES or whatever, but yeah. It's like once you start hitting the pavement and do doing the stumping to get into Congress, you're probably not playing video games very much. So this is an interesting thing. I'd like to watch it. I'd like to watch it if they have someone kind of more interesting on than this weird Congress guy from Florida. At the end, though, I love at the very end of the article, there's a great thing. So they talk about how they tried to throw him some hardball questions, and they actually caught him kind of off guard on one of them, but then kind of, he kind of went into softball territory again. And then it says, quote, "All right, guys, keep defending democracy," or whatever, said Twitch commenter Craig Jenkum when the crew signed off. "Don't worry, they will next Thursday when the show returns with another politician, Congresswoman Susan Delbany, this time with Wii Sports." And I just think it's
Wii Sports!
Yeah.
At least play like Mario Tennis, right?
Yeah.
But like Wii Sport, really?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that something could be like. First of all, I love that comment because that is so like emblematic of how I would think a Twitch audience would view this kind of show. To be like, all right, guys, keep defending democracy or whatever. Like, yeah. But I also think it'll be interesting to see, because I'm guessing that they let the politicians pick what game they want to play, right? I think it'd be interesting to see how much they like even censor themselves there, where they're like. They wouldn't pick like a certain game because it has guns in it because they're anti-gun, or they would pick a game with gun because they are pro-gun. Like this guy picked Madden probably because it's just football and he doesn't know video games, but also he's like, oh, what game can you? There's nothing more American than football or whatever. It's like that's such a publicized like rote thing to do, and I think it'd be interesting to see what kind of games these politicians pick. Weird shit. Weird world we live in.
This is a delightful story. I love this.
Yeah.
Video games with politicians. So real quick, Spider-Man, Mr. Spooderman.
Mr. Spider-Man.
That's a game coming out from Insomniac for the PS4, and they got a story trailer that's like 2 minutes. And it's basically just Spider-Man being like, oh my god, we need to stop the Sinister Six. Will you help me, my 2 friends? And they said, well, we'll do it. His 2 friends are Miles Morales, who apparently doesn't suit up in this, which is a crime, because Miles Morales Spider-Man is like the coolest Spider-Man. But we're going to get a whole movie with him, so I guess I'm not that worried. And the woman is Mary Jane, and it took me by surprise because she doesn't look like Mary Jane, other than that she has red hair. And I was shocked that that's who it was. But there's that, and then Spider-Man talks to Norman Osborn, who also doesn't look like Norman Osborn.
I was gonna say he looked a little weird, and even Peter Parker looked a little weird with the mask off.
Yeah, there's the more when I watched this, the thing that struck me, because when we've seen all the other gameplay, right, when we saw the other gameplay, all the supervillains look like they're supposed to look. Like, Mr. Negative looks like he's right out of the comics, although his design is pretty hard to get wrong. Kingpin looks exactly like he's supposed to look. Scorpion looks great. Electro looks great, although a little different. Rhino looks great. All the villains look exactly like they should because they got the costumes, they nailed it. And now, in this trailer, we see a bunch of just people out of costume, like other characters, and I'm like, nobody looks right. Like, none of the normal people look like they're supposed to look, with the exception of Miles Morales. No, actually, no, I take that back. Miles Morales looks too old. Like, he should look younger.
He looks older, and is Peter Parker supposed to be older in this, too? Like, he's not a fucking high schooler, doesn't seem like.
I think he is supposed to be older than this in this just because it's based off of, his more recent adventures. So that doesn't bother me. But
so everyone's aged up a little bit.
Yeah, but like Mary Jane doesn't look like Mary Jane at all, except for the fact that she has red hair. Norman Osborn doesn't look like Norman Osborn at all. And that actually really bothered me because these characters have very like canonized ways they're supposed to look.
Yeah.
So it bugged me. But
so who's this Silver Sable?
Silver Sable is, as it explains in this article, she's a mercenary, but I think she's a product of like the 80s or maybe the 90s. I think the 80s though. And she would sometimes she fights against Spider-Man, sometimes she teams up with him. She's like a reoccurring side character. I remember, I think it was maybe the TV show. She's like the daughter of a crime lord, and she has this whole story arc where she's trying to avenge her dad because like the Kingpin like either killed him or just ruined his crime organization, like took it over. So there's that, and
just another villain.
Yeah, no, her character's not super interesting. Although her character in the video game, she looks the way she's supposed to look. Her in terms of her costume and everything. So I was happy with that. But yeah, there wasn't actually a whole lot to say about this just because even though it was a story trailer, it didn't really reveal any story. It just sort of showed us a bunch of other characters and them doing stuff.
It just seems like it's Spooderman versus the Sinister Six plus more people.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm sure the plot will be a little deeper than that because Insomniac aren't idiots. They can write a decent story, and I'm not worried about it. I'm sure it'll be fine. But that trailer didn't really tell us much. Didn't give much to work off of except for some weird character designs. Now,
you know what does look awesome though?
What
is the Into the Spider-Verse movie?
Like I mentioned earlier, we're getting a Miles Morales movie, and that's the Into the Spider-Verse movie.
The animation that looks fucking awesome, super unique.
Yes, it does.
I don't even really care about.
We got an old Spider-Man in that. So anyway, we're about to be out of time here, so let's talk real quick about video games that have just come out. Octopath Traveler came out last Friday, and man, that has gotten rave reviews so far, so everyone's excited.
Well, it's gotten some bad reviews, too.
I have seen none of those. I refuse to believe they exist. And in a few days, we have games such as Mega Man X Legacy Collection coming out for everything. We have No Man's Sky coming out.
No Man's Sky!
Specifically, it's coming out for the Xbox, but I think that's the same time that the next update comes out. And we have Banner Saga 3 coming out for everything, including Mac, which is nice. After that...
Another Yeast game. There's one every week.
Another Yeast game.
Whoa.
That wasn't funny at all. Then we have stuff
Chasm. I'm really excited for Chasm.
Chasm. Titan Quest is getting re-released on the Switch,
Hmm.
which is kind of fun. I might buy that. But that's it. There isn't a whole lot yet. We're sort of starting to enter that like August lull because in preparation for all the stuff that's going to come out in the fall.
The flood before Christmas.
Yes. So that's the thing. That's what's happening. Hey,
That's what's up.
I hope you've enjoyed the show. Have you? You can't answer
Have
me.
I?
This is
Me?
no, not you. I'm talking to the audience. This is
Oh.
should be rhetorical. But think, Chris. I want you to think about something though.
Okay.
While I'm talking about this other stuff, just think about it.
Okay.
So anyway, if you've enjoyed the show, thank you. I appreciate you listening. I'm sure Chris does as well.
No.
No, Chris doesn't care about you. This has been Don't Copy That Floppy, a video game news podcast, broadcasting live Friday, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/DCTF podcast. We've got show archives on our amazing benefactor, chipbit.net. Check out that website. Check out their streaming 24/7 Chipbit radio. It's real good. And we also have an archive over on iTunes. So if you want to go over there, you want to sub to us on there, you want to leave us a nice rating and review, that would be fantastic. Please consider it. Also, if you're having trouble finding our newest episodes on there, just scroll down. There is a weird glitch with the feed that is coming from Chipbit to iTunes that basically just makes it so that the timestamp is not being put on the episodes, so they are getting uploaded. They're just being uploaded as date unknown, and those just get bumped to the bottom. Annoying. I apologize. We can't figure out how to fix it. We'll get there eventually. So all that stuff, great way to support the show. If you want to support the show in an even better, more amazing way, and you have a lot of money, go over to our Patreon, patreon.com/DCTF podcast, and give us a little money every month. You got access to bonus content, which is Dan and I just talking about things. We talk about all the things that we want.
I let him out of my basement and we get to talk about things.
Once a month, you let him out.
Once a month.
Just once.
Gotta
And
get him out.
Also, if you want to follow us on social media, we are on Twitter at DCTF Podcast. We post when we were going to go live with episodes, and we post when our episodes are up on iTunes. We even provide the links so that you don't have to scroll down to find them. So convenient. Now,
So convenient.
with all that said, until next time, Chris, what do people have to remember?
Don't copy that floppy. We'll ban you for being a racist.